Okay. Yeah. Before we go into like any questions, I don't know if you guys have any specific questions. We can check the doc too. It's kind of important just to kind of recognize like where we're at in the cohort and everything. And so just know like next week, we're already starting to do project assessments
You'll
for the
talk to me
capstone.
the week after. The week
Yeah, so
after.
we have next week and then the week after that, right? For like assessments, which is perfectly fine. One thing I recommend for you guys to do is to make sure, if as close as possible, trying to do one earlier than later. And also like feel free to share with me like what you have before the actual assessment. I think most of you guys do that now, which is really good. But just kind of be aware that share your work ahead of time because there's no reason why you couldn't share it, right? And I think you guys know that too, because it helps me identify if there's anything I see in particular that's missing. Hopefully you all know now, just looking at the rubric, right? That's kind of like what I judge off as like passing stuff, that including the capstone. I always give you guys advice, even after passing or not passing or whatnot. But at least filling out the requirements for the accomplished section, right? So there's like, I think like, I can't remember what the first part is, but like something that's underperforming, accomplished, and then that I think is like exemplary or something like that, on the right column. As long as you have at least on the middle column accomplished, that's considered a pass in my book. So that's what you should aim for. If you have questions on those rubrics, like reach out, right? Like don't like, oh, like this seems kind of vague, or I'm not really quite sure. Like that's where you can always reach out. Now I will say is that is how to pass it, right? And if for some reason during the assessment, there's some factor that's not going to have you pass, I'll let you know and know specifically what you can do to make sure you can pass. But one thing I keep emphasizing with you guys is the capstone being like, the capstone's beyond just passing and finishing up like your last project. It's also going to be the thing that you show off, right? To, like, not just the thing you show off, but also the thing you want to talk about, like with an interviewer, basically someone who's like, you're trying to impress, right? So one thing to note too is like the first part you should focus on, and for what the capstone is about, finishing up a full project, making sure you have that full process. And there's always going to be other things you can do. Feel free to add that into your work of being like future work and stuff like that. And then when you're actually graduated, you can, like there's no reason why you can't go back to your capstone and add those things in there or change those things, or maybe and during the assessment, we talk about some methods you could use or some improvements you can do. You can always add those in there. So one thing I'm trying to get at is like, don't feel like you have to make it perfect for the capstone as well, right? Like just making sure you have a decent project that is, has insights, doing your full process. And there's going to be areas that you can probably improve or add into. You can always do that afterwards too. If you're ever curious, like, is this enough or is this sufficient? You can always share it with me ahead of time. And of course, feel free to share it with each other too. Like you guys all have, like you guys all can like critique each other's essentially, right? And learn from each other. So feel free to do that. And I know some people have already done that in the past, so keep it up. Just kind of timing again, like starting next week, we'll do assessments. If you want to have like a sign assessment, just message me right on Slack and just let me know, what days you're available. I was trying to do schedule ones and it's just been giving me some issues. So I'm just saying, all right, let's just make it like that. And I'll try my best to like make it work with your guys' schedule. And then we'll go into next week, which is the last week of October. And then the week after that is the first week in November. And I won't be here, remember, starting November 5th. So technically, we have November 6th as the deadline, right? If you absolutely have to. Just know if it's November 5th or 6th, then it just will be with a different instructor, which, they'll be perfectly fine and stuff like that. We do, like, even though November 6th is that deadline, this is where, like, I don't like to tell you guys until, like like we're getting close. There is a little bit, if you can't reach that November 6th deadline for whatever reason, let's identify that as soon as possible, because there are some options we can do, especially it being the capstone is your last project. It just might need to be extended out. So if you do end up going past that point, really past November 4th, November 5th, 6th, and onward, you'll be working with another instructor, Jeff. I don't know if you guys know Jeff Herman now or interact with him. So he's actually director of he directs basically the self-paced program. So he works with a lot of other students and stuff. You might see him on Slack every once in a while. But just know that that will be the instructor you likely will be working with your assessment. And he's really good. Like you can definitely what's it called? You can definitely like talk with him, check with, your assessment stuff, and he can help you out with there. I think you guys would like his presence too. He's a pretty chill guy. So yeah. Are there any questions? Hopefully I kind of gave through enough. Main thing just know is that November 4th is really like the last time you can do it with me. And after that, the 5th and the 6th and onward, right? Just be with a different instructor. Likely it would be Jeff Herman, the other instructor. Yeah, cool. All right, some quick things to review about not just Capstone, but actually graduating, right? So the Capstone, right, you have your blog posts, your technical work, your non-technical presentation. To graduate, you also need to have a total of 7 blogs. Those 7 blogs are the 5 blogs from each of your projects, and then 2 additional ones. Some of you might have already done that very first blog like early on. So just kind of double check that you have all 7. That's one of the requirements to graduate. So just know that right now I want you guys to focus on your capstone, make sure you get that done. But make sure you also check those blogs and make sure you have all of those completed. And if you can, do you guys know how to submit your blog on Learn? I think we should walk through that a couple times. Yeah, so if you can like go through, if you haven't already, those other like mod, 2, 3, 4, 5, those different project mod projects for those blogs, put those on there. That makes it easier for the backend side for us to mark you off as graduated. If you can't figure it out, just message me and we can figure it out before, we mark you off as graduated. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that kind of hopefully that clarifies a bunch of stuff. Any questions on that? Yeah. Okay. And just assessment, the capstone assessment, like it's not really any different from like a project assessment. It's just that it's the capstone. So just kind of know what level it is. Note that one thing I do try to ask you guys is really think about your model evaluation in your capstone. Think about what insights you're bringing, right? What value you're bringing to your stakeholders. And that's something I really try to emphasize with you guys. Can you pass without going into full detail with that? Yeah, technically, but like, it's going to be important for you, and it's also going to make your work stand out if you show that emphasis and focus on the value that you're bringing to your stakeholders. So just take that into mind. And I think the big thing that I saw from Mod 4 project is you guys are really great doing your models. Make sure you do thorough evaluation where you can say, well, what does it mean now that I have this model trained? Like, what is it, where does it mess up? Where does it succeed? What could probably be improved? Even if you don't do those improvements necessarily for this project, say what could be improved and how could you maybe put in that direction? So think in those terms, and I think that will help you build a really strong project. Cool. All right, so enough kind of like talking about capstone and graduating and stuff like that. Unless you guys have any other questions, we can, yeah, I'll open up to any questions you guys have.
Come on, Jessica, I'm waiting.
I don't have any questions.
That's all right. All right. I'm trying to think of anything else I should let you guys know then.
I do have
oh, what's that?
My project is like, okay, what I really wanted to do, I couldn't find a data set for. So I found like something that I felt like could be similar, relatable, but now I'm like not excited about my project. Yeah.
So are you asking like, what do you do now that like,
yeah,
you're like
relate to like, I don't know.
You're stuck in this loveless marriage of this data set or something?
Yeah, and like, okay, I will say, okay, that was a very open-ended question. Yes, I don't feel like you have to like intuit and give advice because like, I'm sure you would give great advice, but okay, I'll finish what I was saying. I noticed too that with when I did, what was it? The project that I think we had to do like decision trees, classification models. I didn't like that project. Like, I didn't think that project was interesting either. But I think my final product still came out good. So maybe that's something that's encouraging.
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of question where you're like, hey, I got this project that kind of like, it's not exciting to me. Like, what do I do? Right? Like the one solution is like, you just got a boring project right now, and just move on to the next project when you're done with this one, right? Sometimes that's just the best advice I can kind of give a little bit, which happens. But kind of saying more like, what can you kind of do about this? Like, obviously you're only interested in what you're interested, but one thing I think you all might enjoy about any project is really trying to focus on like those technical aspects that you like digging in, like sometimes data exploration, like finding a new technique that maybe you haven't tried out, using like a different library for doing visualization. That can kind of spark a little bit of extra just like kind of like interest in it. And again, one of the aspects, the big part of your project is going to be talking about what is the value to your stakeholders too, right? But you can also think a little bit of, when you're talking about this, a little more meta than like the actual project itself, but when you're talking to like an interviewer or someone else about your project, what things would you talk about your project? One could actually be the actual insights you have, but also you can talk about like, what kind of interesting things did you do for data exploration? Like what kind of relationships you try to dig for and look for? How did you dig for that? How do you search for those things? If you're talking about modeling and stuff like that, a lot of ways, the modeling can be very abstract from the actual project itself. So that might be interesting by itself, is thinking, what kind of strategies can you do with your different machine learning models? So whether that's a deep learning model or whether that's, some other, machine learning aspect, like, if you're using, for example, let's say you're like trying to random forest and stuff like that, how do these hyperparameters change? If you do something like XGBoost or some kind of boosting algorithm, seeing like, how can you improve it? What direction is it going? So hopefully that kind of allows you to at least be interested in the technical process, and that you can at least talk about that, with at least, and this might come up in the sense of an interview where someone says, not so much about like, oh, tell me about a project you've done, but you might say like, oh, tell me about, let's say boosting algorithms. And you say, well, I've done a boosting algorithm in this project, and you can talk about that, where maybe you don't really care about that project in particular because it's kind of boring to you, but at least the technical aspect you can kind of go through. So I don't know, that might kind of help a little bit thinking.
It is helpful. And so I think what I'll do, and listening to what you said, is I think I'm gonna create like a dashboard, and I think I'll be excited about that, because that'll be like good practice for the future.
Yeah, I think that's good. Dashboards can be like, definitely, like I said before, right? Make sure you have your main stuff with the main data science, like the core data science stuff. But a dashboard can be a kind of like you were saying, it kind of build a little more interest too for yourself. Like, oh, here's something that maybe you haven't done too much, and it's also valuable if you can build a dashboard that represents your results, because that is something that you may do with your job, is that you might have to say, well, okay, we have this information, we have these insights, but how do we present this to, something in a way that is useful to stakeholders, to people who are going to be looking at this information. Yeah. So,
helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, good. It was so.
No, that's good. I quickly checked earlier, just for the record, if there's any questions on the doc. I didn't see any questions on there. So it's kind of free open. So if you guys want to go on tangents as I'm kind of talking to, like, feel free to interrupt me or say, oh, what about this? You brought up dashboarding, Jessica. And so I don't know if you guys have all looked at dashboarding technologies, like, or libraries and packages. Jessica, since you brought it up, have you looked at anything in particular that you'd want to use? Okay, that's okay. I saw Alvaro do a little head on, maybe you've looked at something, Alvaro, or used it already.
Well, I plan to be using it, not for the project, for the project I want to. I'm always, me, I'm always like trying something stupid, different than what's in the course, some crazy other technology, and which is kind of a problem for me because it's always another learning curve I have to go through. But I was going to see what I could do with Streamlit.
Yeah, no, Streamlit's a really great one. Here, you mind if I share my screen a little bit?
And Mike's not too. Has Mike heard? Mike, do you know of any dashboards?
Oh, I think you're muted, Mike.
Sorry, I haven't looked into it yet, but I want to.
Cool. Perfect.
Yeah, no, this is really good. Yeah, I will say, like, dashboarding in general and stuff like this. So you can see all the stuff I searched for. But dashboarding in general, right? Like you don't have to necessarily do this for this project, but maybe even after, if you guys, like Alvaro was talking about, sometimes I see that a lot sometimes where you're like, oh, these are some really exciting new flashy stuff. Like I want to learn this. Make sure you take the time to learn the core stuff or do the core thing for your project, and then you can add the extra stuff, right? And yeah, you got to figure out the balance. But one thing you can do is definitely like after this project, like take your capstone project and make a dashboard out of it. And that could be something after this. But yeah, different technologies. So actually, I realized a different student sent me, they were working on a Streamlit dashboard. Let me see if I pull that up. There it is. So yeah, so this right here, a student literally sent this to me. I don't think they'll mind me sharing a little bit. But you can see a little bit of like they were doing, this was not their capstone, it was just like a little side project, the little web app. And they can do things like, let's see here, there it goes. You can select different information and pull up and like get this information there. So it's really interactive and stuff like this. And so this is built on Streamlit, which I have to say like has like, it's been a little more in the conscious mind of people now because it's super easy to like build these like web apps and stuff. So just kind of guys point you guys in a direction. I honestly haven't done a huge amount with Streamlit, like for me personally, but playing around with it for myself has been really fun to like see like what you can do and stuff like this. So this is an example. Actually, I think you can show a few examples. Where is it? This is their website, right? And what's really nice about it in particular is that you don't have to do too much overhead on trying to make a web app work. You can essentially focus on just the Python code and making that work. So I'm trying to see where they had, maybe it's up here, gallery. Yeah. So they had a few examples. So for example, this is, I'm trying to remember where I can click on this. Either source, maybe they have a website already running. I don't want to run it myself. I want someone else to run it. It's not there. Maybe it's an article. But anyway, you can see a little bit, if you play around with here, you can see a little bit what people have made already before and all the different things like people mess around. And again, what's really nice about it is like if you dive into like the tutorials in here, like in the docs, it's like really easy to like actually like basically like take what you already have and recreate that. You probably won't take your whole notebook and create a Streamlit, dashboard, but you might take parts of your notebook. And this is why, like, I tell you guys, like building functions, to help make your project more modular, stuff like this. If you build those functions, it's a lot easier to copy that function over or even put it into a separate file and run that specifically on here. So if you have, for example, like you have something that has like some analysis, like a visualization, like something like that over here, like, and you have the code for this, you can simply just put that over there. Like, oh, here's a graph of like, I don't know, distribution of the data or whatever. Like you can put that in there. If you make that into a modular function, it's a lot easier to kind of like port it over into Streamlit. But yeah, definitely check this out. There's some really great tutorials online. Like if you literally look up Streamlit, tutorial, I'm sure you'd find plenty of really good stuff. These right here are some good guides too. I think, let's hear, creating an app. This kind of walks through a little bit how that works. I haven't gone through this in a whole lot. So again, like Streamlit's kind of like relatively new for me, so I haven't played around with a lot. But like, there's like so few commands. You don't have to. The learning curve is super low. Like you can learn most of the stuff that you would need to make a web app working, like within like a day, maybe 2 days. Like I think there's something like less than 100 different like commands that the Streamlit library actually brings over. And most of those are going to be extra stuff on top of like what you're already building. So yeah, I think this is, if I say like, hey, you want to build a dashboard, Streamlit seems like the way to go. It's not, one thing to note is that it's not as customizable, but as data scientists, you're not usually trying to make something like a really amazing, like full-fledged application that someone's going to use. You're usually trying to demonstrate something that you already have. So I haven't used this particularly, but I know one of our other instructors, Lindsay, has mentioned that some of the people that she knew, I don't think it was her students, but people she knew from the program were using Streamlit to build really quick dashboards. So you could do like, for example, they were doing some contract work. And so they were like, okay, like, let me do this data science part and actually present my findings with Streamlit, which I think kind of adds a little extra flair to what you're doing. It means iterations really quick. But for you guys, for your projects, I think this is something that you can add in addition to your repo already and say, oh, here's my project, and you can use it to kind of demonstrate. In fact, you could probably take something like this if you write your blog post about your project. You could probably add in like, oh, here you can check out the interaction with my project on here. So I think you guys would have a lot of fun checking this out and everything. But yeah, so this is kind of like, I would say, again, if you want to do dashboarding and you're like, I don't really know anything about dashboarding, I've just heard of things pretty much, checking out Streamlit's probably going to be like a really like easy transition. If you want something with more like power, like essentially more customization, you probably want to look at something like Dash or Flask. So like I would say probably like if I go like ease of use of like how quickly you can implement stuff, it'd probably be Streamlit is probably the fastest thing. And then we'd have Plotly's Dash, and then Flask, which I know Dash is built off of Flask itself, and I think Streamlit is also built on Flask. Flask, you have like the most customization, and then I wouldn't suggest this for other people, like for you guys for your projects, unless you wanted to learn this specifically. Other Python like web app applications are like Django, but honestly, like Django's a little more cumbersome in the sense that usually it's much more used for long-term applications and stuff like that, which you might not necessarily need for your little project and stuff. Flask was developed as essentially a way to quickly make web apps very quickly, and Streamlit has just been like literally like streamlined this whole process for data science. So
isn't Flask like kind of a front end for Django, like an API for Django?
I don't know actually. Flask versus Django. I don't think, are they real? I don't know if they're necessarily related. I don't know the full history of that. For the record, I used to use Django a lot to make like web applications and stuff. And Flask is just like a lot easier to like build this stuff, like a micro lightweight web framework, which might not mean anything to you all, right? Like, but basically the idea, you can think of Flask as being like, you can do stuff really quick and not have to like worry about every single detail. Where Django, you might have other parts that tied into it, which makes it just take longer to do something, but it makes it more robust, in the long term.
It's so much more powerful because,
Exactly. It's easier to like think of it like building like an Android app or an Apple app, like iOS app, right? It's like that's going to take a lot of work and stuff like that, and making sure things are secured and like the way that works. But maybe that's not the best scenario, or analogy. But building like a web app is going to be a lot easier in the sense because you don't have to worry about the operating system in the same way that you would have to worry about an Android app versus an iOS app. You can kind of think of Django in that way. It's like Django is kind of like you can build more robust things, but it's just going to take a lot more time. It's a little more not clunky, it just takes more. It's more cumbersome because you just have to think about the different parts. Where Flask is kind of like streamlining a lot of that like process. And then I believe Streamlit is built off of Flask, but I know let's hear Plotly's Dash, which I believe you guys know one of the instructors, Raphael, has done a few things about Dash before. I think that's actually in the spreadsheet too of like different stuff that is done. But Dash is built on top of Flask, and it's just more specific to Plotly. Note that Plotly is like it's not like an open source like part. It's a proprietary library, but it's freely available for the most part, that you can probably use parts of it, and it's meant for more data science, more data analytics work. So you might find things useful. So especially if you've been using Plotly plots in your own projects, you can directly port that over with Dash here, because this is their stuff that they built in-house. Yeah, I'm gonna see.
I feel like I would probably use this one.
Dash.
Yeah, and I think I've heard of this one before.
So I just want to see if that was Flask or not, but yeah, let's hear. Oops, why can't I click it? There we go. Yeah, you've probably heard of Dash before, because this is like, again, you can customize a whole lot of stuff into it. It's basically using Flask as basically doing like, it's built on top of Flask, if that makes sense. So if I'm being honest, I haven't used too much of Dash specifically. I've used more Flask on my own stuff. But from what I understand from people like, it's like, oh, if you can use Plotly stuff, which is nice because it's imperative. No, if you guys have used Plotly, I know some people have used other plots and stuff like this. If you look at the code of writing Plotly, it's like passing in parameter list, like dictionaries and stuff, versus like using more of a functional method. It's a little bit easier to understand sometimes. So a lot of people like it like this way because it's a little bit easier to write out things. And you can see, for example, interactive stuff, which Plotly does a lot of interactive things. So yeah, good they have a little gallery here. So you can see like different stuff that people have done. So let's say like this guy here. Oh, I've done this one before. Messed around. So this one's showing a little bit like how you can do like real-time data. So you can, the idea here, they actually have a CSV behind here, but the idea here is like, you could have data updated, every minute or something from like an API, and then giving the information on the side here. And you can do a little more interactive stuff. So these components right here are all Plotly stuff. So it could be useful. Again, this is more specific to like, bin speed and everything, but you can get the idea here. So you can make some really nice things that can be interactive and stuff. And again, this is where I would say like this might be this would be closer to something that you might build as like a full project. Like your goal is to build a dashboard for a client or for whoever you're working with. But I would say Streamlit would be closer to the side of like, I want to show off a project. So that's at least generally how I view it.
If you want to do it quickly too, right?
Exactly.
If you want to get it out there and not have to worry too much about putting too much effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see here. Actually, I know one of our instructors, Lindsay. I have to think what. I might have an old message. I'll show you an example that one of the instructors had made for fun. I have to search a little bit. Yeah, does anybody have any questions while I kind of search through this a little bit? See. No? Okay, there it is.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What if I finish my project and everything and my current blog post on time, but I'll have like I think 2 more blog posts to do, because for one project Eli was like, you don't need a blog post now, you can write it at the end, and then like of course I did that.
I already
because I will.
I mentioned that to you before, Vic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is where like I gotta say, out of like the instructors, probably Eli and me had been like really like the most just like, oh, you guys do whatever. But Eli in particular was very like, yeah, you can do it later. He was very trusting in the students that you guys would do it as you needed to. But then I'm also someone who's more realistic. I'm like, I know that's not going to happen. Like if it was me, I'd wait until the last minute, because why would I do it now if I can do it later? Future Victor can take care of it. So yeah, so if there's a blog post that you're supposed to have and you haven't quite got it, probably go take care of that. It's going to be part of year 7. So
what I was going to ask is, so if I get everything in, by the end of the month, and then the 6th is like the deadline for like the extra 2 blog posts. But if it takes me like a couple days or more, I mean, hopefully I finish it by the 6th, but like, I like to write a blog post that I feel really good about. So yeah, so would it be like, how would that work if it goes like anything beyond the 6th, or yeah? Yeah,
so let's say you finish the Capstone project, like let's say November 2nd, right? You're done with that, but you still have the blog post left. And it takes you past the 6th. That should be okay. The biggest thing is just like making sure we know that, so then we can like make sure like for example, once you finish that blog post, since I won't be available, that you'd probably let Jeff know, and say, oh, I finished this blog post. And then that whenever you finish that would be the official graduation day or date that you graduated because you finished all the requirements. So yeah, so we can't graduate you until you finish those blog posts as well. Technically, the requirements are that you have to first do all the projects and pass them. So step one. The other one is to have those 7 blog posts in total. And then the third one, which I don't even mention half the time because it's like you guys already done this pretty much, is complete 95% of the curriculum, in the sense that it shows that you click done essentially. Now, if you check, I know some people, I don't know if anyone does this, but sometimes some people like won't check it off, even though they kind of like read through it. They're just like, oh, I want to go back to it later on, so they don't check it off. You know what I'm talking about when I click done, right? On the, yeah. That's probably fine. It might just show up on my end, and what will probably happen is someone might message me like from admin and say, hey, like this person says they only finished like 70% of the curriculum. Like, what's up? I'm like, they're probably someone who just didn't click done a bunch of times when they were actually done with it. So I think no one's in that situation, right? I think most people have like clicked done right as they have gone through. Yeah. So those are the 3 requirements to graduate. The good thing is, and I don't like to try to make this like really like obvious, like public necessarily until like you get closer, is that if you have just the blog post done, like we're not going to try to transfer you. Like at least I'm not going to push to transferring you guys because you're going to be really close. And because you're at the end of the cohort, it's a little bit easier. However, if it starts getting into like a month later, like that's when, student services bats and I say, hey, why is this person still here, not graduated after a month? And that's when things go there. So to make your life easier, try to just get that. If you take an extra week to finish all the parts, you should be fine.
Okay. So. Well, now that I know the hard deadline is the 6th, chances are it'll be done the 6th.
I think Andy mentioned like, can you just say the deadline's like earlier than that? So that way, like,
yes.
I think you mentioned that before, okay. Jessica, didn't you? Yeah. I feel you guys, and just, I don't know. I'd hate to lie to you guys just to make you guys finish, but maybe I'll remember that next time.
Cool.
No?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I hear one of the babies crying right now. I don't know if you guys can hear that. It's in like 2 other rooms down. So yeah. Oh, I was going to show you guys this Streamlab. So this is built by one of the instructors, Lindsay. She was showing this to me, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I think they did it for what's it called? It's that one that you like. It sounds really dumb. You go around and you grow things, and like you're in a little city, and they're little animals. Is it Animal Crossing? I think. I don't know if anyone plays that game. I don't know. Okay, I don't play it either, so I don't really know. But basically, took some information. So, for example, like you can see the stuff updates as you put stuff in here. So they took some data from a data set. I think it was from a Kaggle data set on Animal Crossing. And I guess like there's different fish you can like find depending if you like on certain times of the day, which is cool. But you can see a little bit is this right here. And this is actually all of the actual stuff right here. So this right here is using the Streamlit part. So anytime you see this ST, let's see if I can do this real quick. Oops. So these are the only times like, these are like relatively easy. And what's nice is that when instead of printing out stuff, it just like can print straight to like the web app essentially. It makes life a lot easier. So this ST part is the only parts that are actually Streamlit. But the rest of this, you guys can probably look at this. It's just regular Python. It's nothing too crazy. So for example, this right here is a Streamlit select box, which you saw. Which month is it over here? So like, where is it? Which month is it? So selecting this. And what's nice about that, it's like, oh, like, whatever someone selects, you don't have to do anything fancy, which if anyone's done any like web development, usually you have to think about like, what things change, how to update it. Basically you say, oh, the month is going to be equal to, the month key is going to be equal to whatever someone selects. And then basically you can use that information, for example, like month key. Oops. Oh my goodness, sorry. I'm on a different keyboard, so it's throwing me off. There you go. You can see a little bit like writing this information out and using that as a variable. So that's kind of like the idea that you can make something interactive and not do too much change. This is where like, again, like I would say like personally, like if you can add things into a, like if you have it in a method, it'll be a lot easier to like modify and change stuff. Cause like, it's like, oh, if for example, you were going to present, what, like if you're going to do a filtering, you can just say, oh, the month argument is going to equal this, and then you just use a select box or whatever you have for a Streamlit part, and just pass it into that variable and then pass into your function and do that. So it's relatively easy. Hopefully it doesn't look too intimidating to you guys. I don't know if this comes across as being like pretty straightforward, or at least not too intimidating.
That's way too easy, actually.
Yeah, this is really easy. Like anytime you want to write anything like to the the web app itself, like you can see here, like subheader, image, markdown, like this makes life really easy. The biggest thing that might be different for you all is actually deploying. When you actually deploy it, saying like, well, how for example, I wanted to hear like, how did I get to this part? Using Heroku, which I believe it actually shows about how to deployment flow, not development flow, deploy an app. So this shows a few ways to do this, and probably the easiest one is using Heroku. But you can see a little bit of what's going on. I guess you could probably do it with other stuff too, but it goes to this whole resource. And again, if you just literally search Streamlit tutorial, like you'll find lots of stuff like from data science towards data science on Medium and stuff like that. They'll talk about like how they built that stuff, and you can probably see what they've done, and take something like a repo and play around with it, like clone it, modify it, deploy it out, see how it works, and then adjust it to what you need to do for your project. So yeah. But you can see here, like there's only 20 instances where Streamlit was even like called. Like that's like nothing, right? For this 150 lines of code. So yeah. Anyway, but if you want something more robust, probably Dash is closer to what you want, and Django. Sorry, my dogs are outside barking. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Probably someone's walking by and they're getting upset. Yeah. Any questions about that? Or look interesting? Yeah, cool. Yeah, I would I feel like I could try to go through it like live with you guys, but I'm sure there's a bunch of tutorials that you'll find a lot easier to like go through it and stuff like this. My biggest thing is like find a tutorial. Like if I just go, let's just try it right now, Streamlit tutorial. All right, you see Medium's like the next one up there. Towards data science. What did I tell you? I told you like towards data science is going to be like one of the first ones on here. And let's see here. So they're just looking at, oh, an in-depth, only 8 minutes long to like read an in-depth Streamlit. So, pretty straightforward. But you can see a little bit like if you can, let's see here. Well, they even use cache. That's exciting. But you can probably find the repo in here, like where they actually do stuff, and you can play around with it and try to rebuild it. So let's see if we can get to the meat of what's going on here. See, full code right here. Boom. See that? Makes life easy. I don't know if they had it. Oops. I don't know if they had it linked to anything. But your biggest thing is probably just going to be trying to make sure it deploy it out for other people to use. But you can always run it locally, which is going to be the thing that you guys don't want to run it locally, right? Like on your own computer, and then deploying it out with Heroku, which again, it's a free instance. I think you can have unlimited instances as long as the biggest thing is how much power you have per Heroku instance or whatever they call it. So you should be fine. I don't think you even have to put in like billing information. So you don't have to worry about accidentally getting billed for whatever you're doing.
I have a stale Heroku laying around for a few years that I haven't touched. I gotta check to see if there's anything there. But yeah, there was no
it
billing
exists somewhere.
information.
Yeah. Speaking of which, any questions or anything you guys wanted to mention about this? I'm just going off of like my head and just stream of consciousness, whatever I'm thinking of. So I talked about I just said Heroku, oh, you don't have to worry about it. Like, I'm not going to charge you anything. Obviously AWS, Google Cloud Platform, those things can charge you, right? For if you're using GPUs or if you're using EC2 instance or whatever you're doing, right? Or storage, which I think can be kind of you might be like, ooh, this is kind of scary a little bit. The good thing is that the cases that I've heard people accidentally leaving things on, where they've charged themselves hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And they're like, oh no, I had thousands of dollars on this AWS account charged over. Usually I hear things like they email support and they were like, don't worry about it. This happens all the time, and just under their bill. But one thing that can be helpful to kind of help with that for those kind of services is let's hear privacy.com. So I don't know if you guys have heard this site and stuff like this, but I like to use some of these things. All right, this is fair. You basically, having an account, you can create a virtual card. And what's nice about that virtual card is that it can limit to how much you're paying per month, a total limit and stuff like this. So you get a new card number, like whatever this card number is, right? And using that card number as like your credit card, but it's backed by your bank and everything like that. So you can limit to being like, oh, I only want to spend $5 per month at most, or, you know, $20 per month, or, you know, $100 in total in its whole life and stuff like that. And you can manage those cards and stuff. So I like this tool. I've used it for a while. You know, anytime someone talks about like, you know, monetary stuff, always double check, you know, like, like what the system is, but at least in like from what I've seen and, you know, me playing around with it and seeing, you know, how they do stuff, it seems pretty secure, but of course you have to decide that yourself. But this is something I'll try. I sometimes will use for like services and stuff where I don't want to make sure like one thing I like to do is like when I have like subscription services, but you get like that free 30 days, but you have to put in your credit card or whatever, and you're like, I don't get my credit card charged if I forget to cancel. I use this because then it's easy to just say, oh, just gets denied and then no harm, no foul, right? So yeah, anyway, this has been useful to me. So you can use that for like, you know, AWS and like Google Cloud Platform and other services like that. And that might help you just make sure you don't accidentally get pulled over. There's more formal ways to make sure there's a billing alerts, like if something happens. So like, just know that those cloud platforms are generally made for businesses in the sense that like, you don't want, like if you reach your cap, you don't want to just stop working, right? Because you can imagine like there's a huge influx that you weren't expecting, but you know, let's say it's valuable for you now more people are using it. So like, I'm trying to give an example of this, but like, if you imagine like, you know, you have a bunch of like, you know, people who are paying to play a game or something like this, and you design this on the cloud platform, you know, it might cost you like, you know, 5 cents essentially per user playing. But then like, there's like a huge number of people, like let's say it gets really popular and it's like, you know, 1 million people are playing at once, right? And you're still making money off of those 1 million people, but now it's 1 million times 5 cents, right? So like you have to pay that much, you know, for the service. You don't want to just cut off and say, oh, it's not working anymore. So in general, there isn't a way, like AWS, Google Cloud Platform, all those cloud platforms don't want to just shut it off when you reach a limit. They'll give you a billing alert, but it's alert, right? It's saying, hey, you're reaching the max, or you've reached the max. Like you should probably look into this, but it'll kind of keep charging you, right? So this is kind of like a little extra like assurance, I think. Like, you know, okay, at least my card's not all of a sudden be charged, you know, hundreds or like, you know, I don't think you can even hook up your bank account, but like having your credit card charged a huge amount, whatever, you can at least avoid that situation. But there are billing alerts and stuff like that with AWS and Google Platform. So this doesn't fix the whole problem, but it does give you a little peace of mind. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, cool. My dog's just crazy right now. I don't know if you guys can hear them. Can you guys hear them? Oh yeah.
Yeah, we can hear.
They're so funny. They walk. Someone walks by and they get way excited and they sound super scary. And then like they go up to them and they're like, oh, like they just want to play. Dogs are funny like that. Yeah. Anything else you guys want to talk about then? Don't think I have anything too much.
Oh, going back to blogs, what
can
we write the blogs about? The extra ones.
Yeah. So
kind of just wide open, sort of.
It really is wide open. It's really about talking about your data science related, right? Oh. And the way I kind of think of it is your blogs are kind of like your way to put your presence, being like, look, I'm a data scientist, right? So some options might be talking about some aspect like that you haven't talked about yet, right? Let's say, let's talk about, let's say you learn about dashboards, like, talk about how you built your dashboard. If you did something, let's say like you did a neural network and you're like, so you tried an LSTM or you did a time series project and you want to talk about some specific part about that project. You can talk about that kind of thing. I think those are all really good options when you try to focus in on some technical aspect and explaining that, because that shows that that this, like you at least have some knowledge of this technical aspect, which kind of gives a little evidence of it, but also it shows you other people that you can communicate this information to. So
explain an algorithm.
Yeah.
How does this algorithm You know, what are the nuts and bolts behind this algorithm?
Yeah, you can go really deep into that technical part. We're saying like the algorithm, like the mathematics, and like how does this work? You can even put in something like, how would you actually, program this part? Like what does it look like when you do data exploration? Like what are those steps looking like? You can think of it like a case study. Like you can say, oh, here's an aspect of me exploring the data and like what we're looking for, or me developing, like using a decision tree or a random forest. There's basically, like, I would say, if you're not really sure, think of like what your project, like your different projects, and think about like those different steps, like what you've done, and talk about something on there. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Could they also be on like views and opinions or experiences, like having to do with like anything in data science or like boot camp, like advice for somebody else,
Yeah.
things like that?
I think that'd be great too. And again, like the way I kind of view it, like since I'm the one who's kind of marking this off, I'm pretty open with what your blog is. If you blog about fishing, like obviously I'm not going to be like, oh, it's a good blog for fishing. But I think something like that would be perfectly fine by me. And if you're wondering too, like what would make sense, like again, it's all about like when you are applying and people find your stuff, is this something that you like what kind of message are you sending to other people when you're writing this stuff? So, talking about your boot camp experience is perfectly good, right? Perfectly valid. And I think that would be actually useful because then it tells other people about like what you've done, what you experienced, what trials, you've gone through, what you've learned. I think that would be really good as well. And you can do something more, more to the field. Like if you want to talk about, privacy in data or something, like if that's something that you're interested in, like you can talk about, like ways, like one big aspect of data, like we've talked a little bit about this kind of stuff, but like, like when you are doing data science and stuff like this, making sure you're ethical, right? And saying, like how do you be ethical and still be a data scientist and stuff like this. So there's a whole bunch of options. And again, since I'm the one looking at it, I'm pretty open. I'm not like, oh, it has to be in this format or it has to be about this thing. So yeah, it's really up to you guys. And if you're not sure, like you come up with an idea and you're like, I'm not sure if this is like the right thing or just want to double check, again, just feel free to message me. Or, if it's past November 6th, feel free to message Jeff or another instructor to say, hey, like, does this seem like good? And the likely answer is going to be, yes, that's perfect. So, yeah.
What's Jeff's last name? Because I think I came in late and so I missed that part.
Yeah, Jeff Herman. Let's see here.
What is it?
Jeff Herman. I'll put it on the Slack.
Herman?
How's that?
Okay, sweet. Yeah, that sounds
I'll put it right underneath where I sent out. I don't think I want to ping him. I'll put it on the like in the thread for what I announced about the study group.
Okay, so. Sweet.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And that's not yet 100% that he'll be the person, right?
It's like 99%. So he's been told that he should be doing it.
Okay.
And so I don't just say 99%. It's like, what if Jeff has needs to go on vacation, or I don't know, like has an family emergency. I don't know. But yes, he should be it. Let's see here. I'm trying to make sure I don't ping him. So I'm putting it in a little bit of.
You could write his name.
Yeah, I put his name and I put his tag too, so you guys can do that. So, yeah, yeah, he's really good. He does the self-paced right now, but he actually was one of the first instructors on the online team for data science. So he's got some experience. So yeah, I think actually he's even doing, if I remember this right, oh man, he's doing his master's right now concurrently in, I want to say it's data science specifically, but maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, he has some really, like, talking with him, he has some really good like knowledge and like current research and stuff like this, and talking about what people are doing. So like if you have a question for him, like after I'm gone, like feel free to ping him, and feel free to ping any of the instructors anytime. Yeah.
Cool. I learned too that maybe you guys already heard this from your career coaches, but that once we declare our like work search or job search, one of the requirements is writing 1 blog post a week.
So
It's in that it's in that enrollment document,
Oh, okay.
the enrollment agreement. There's a whole bunch of things. They talk about certain number of GitHub commits per week and all this and all that.
Oh, how many GitHub?
I think 5 GitHub commits per week and stuff
Cool.
like that, which is just a commit, right?
Yeah, that's
put a dot in this document and then commit it. I added a dot.
I think the main purpose of that, from my understanding, is like just making sure that you are being active in trying to like while you're searching for jobs, you don't want to just be completely go like dark, right? Like you want like, because then let's say it takes you a month to find a job. Well, and you haven't done anything for that month. And so you apply for the job and someone goes, oh, what have you done recently? And they see like, has this person done anything for the past month? Like what is this person doing? You know, and that's just for a month, pretending that it takes 2, maybe even 3 months, you know, for some people. It's like, you want to make sure you have something available. So I talk with your career coach for sure about the requirements. But I don't think they're too crazy, especially when you don't have another project that you have to worry about a deadline and stuff. Hopefully that also is reassuring. But yeah, talk with your career coach. You know, I don't know how strict it is necessarily, but I'm sure the career coach can talk to you more about that. So.
And weren't you saying before too that like people who do declare theirs sooner tend to get jobs faster?
Yeah, I would say, wait, declare, can you clarify that?
Like declare the job search, because it's like once we graduate, we have like 60 days to like declare our job search.
I would say the people who try to do the calculus of like, okay, I'm gonna wait until this point, usually ends up being harder for them to get started again. I would say ride the momentum of, you know, that where you guys are right now, is that don't wait, be like, oh, I'll wait, you know, 30 days before I do it, because, you know, what I think sometimes people think.
I already committed to a week after finishing this.
That's
I already,
good.
I already put for the 13th to start the whole process.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's sometimes a little bit of the kick to just get you going, because at least from my experience and what I know personally I do is that if I try to wait things off, I'll just not do it. And so I would say is that from my experience, you know, everyone's different, but my experience, the students who are like, yes, just right after they're graduating, basically just going right into it. You know, like Alvaro said, like a week after, like I think that's perfectly reasonable. And just don't like, I've heard people trying to do like the whole like, oh, let me wait 60 days, you know, and then I'll have this amount of time, and then, you know, have this. I'm just like, just go for it. Like I think sometimes people think too hard about it. It's sometimes you just got to dive in and you'll go through it. And 6 months is a decent amount of time. Like, I don't think I've really had any one of my students in the past that graduated, dedicated themselves to the job search and not find something within those 6 months. I could be wrong, but I think in general, like when I'm mentally thinking of everyone who has gone through, they found a position within that time.
Yeah, because I just think that when you take time in between, like you can kind of get a little lazy, you know, start, you know, it becomes a vacation.
Yeah, it's easy to get your new normal. But it's good to recognize that, right? Because like when you recognize what you would do, then you can make sure you can avoid those situations, right? So that's what I think of things.
I could come up with a whole lot of lies of what I would be doing if I didn't just go right into it. I lie to myself all day. That's not a problem. I know I'll be doing this, I'll be doing that. It's not going to be a problem. Yeah, and then the day comes and I'm like, oh, where did those days go?
Yeah, yep, that seems about right. And you know, sometimes life happens too. So like, you know, don't feel like if you feel like you have to extend it out, you know, like do what you need to, but don't extend it out just because. My suggestion is don't extend it out just because you're like, I want to like. Usually, I think of like whenever someone's trying to think of like the numbers of like exactly what they should do, that's usually a bad sign for them, because it's like they're trying to do this calculus, whereas really it's like you just gotta go for it and things will work out. Yeah.
It's just, I mean, I just decided I'm gonna commit to some dates and that's it. And if I make the dates, great. If I don't, well, you know, but like I already committed to when the draft for the resume is gonna be done, and stuff like that. So I'm sure she's gonna hold me to it. So I gotta, you know.
And sometimes it's good to have that fire. Like we said, like sometimes having that deadline is just enough to like, like to give you enough fire to be like, all right, I need to get this done. This is actually, I think, I will say is that if you guys do extra stuff, you guys will see that, like, how do I say this? Like I mentioned Udacity a couple times. Like Udacity has a policy where you can like do things like indefinitely.
Really?
Yeah, like, but you have to keep paying, right? So like you have to pay per month. And I have to say, I used to work a little bit with Udacity. I don't think I'm breaking any, not breaking anything. But I used to work with Udacity, and there were, I do know there were some people who had that indefinite part, and they'd say, "Oh, I'm almost done with this project," and that project would take 4 months, and it was just too easy for them to go. And I honestly, I've also seen in the direction of Flatiron where I've had someone in the past who was on a structured pacing like you guys are, and they decided it's like, you know what, like I want to go self-paced because I think I can. Their reasoning was actually, I think I can finish this quicker than like we can do in this pacing. And I'm like, well, like it's up to you, but like just know these parts. They took much longer than anticipated. I think sometimes we can tell ourselves certain things to think that we're going to be on top of it, and then it's just not realistic, which is fine. Like it's okay that like to have expectations and realize you're not going to meet them, but like recognizing that's going to be you is like the real important aspect. Like just because you're like, I need that deadline so I can know for sure that I'll actually get it done. I think Andy said the same thing. Like I'm with you all. Like if you recognize your characteristics, it's easier to plan for that versus like trying to be idealistic. I tell my little brother this all the time because he's like, he always tells me, he's like, oh, I want to do this thing. I want to do this thing. And I'm like, well, you should put it back. Oh, I'll do it next week. And he never does it. And like, and then he thinks he's idealistic. He's like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And I'm like, just go for it. And take some months and won't do it.
It's like going to the beach when the water's cold.
Yeah, you just gotta dive in,
Yeah, if you're gonna take those little steps, you'll never get in. You just decide why the water's too cold.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, but anyway.
Okay, along those lines, because that made me think of, I was talking to someone about this recently, but like also like jumping off of like a I don't want to say cliff, but like jumping off the rocks into the water. It's like the longer one stands there, the more it's like they just like get in their head. And so it's like you have to just not even think about it and like jump. Otherwise, you're standing up there forever. Like, did I? Oh, it's scary.
It's that phase change. Like I remember that for physics. It's like when you have a phase change, it's like this sudden change. And it's kind of like what we have. You get used to your normal, whatever you're in, the state you're in right now, you get used to that. And it becomes harder and harder to like get out of that, like that little bit of activation energy to get out of into a new state. So if you're already flowing with that momentum, like go for it. Like don't wait too long. But yeah. Anyway, I like these analogies. I'm gonna have to write these down and tell my brother about that. He's funny. He's been trying to do. He was talking about learning more about data science stuff. He's like, oh, it's actually really useful for him, his work. And he cracks me up because he's like, oh, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm like, what are you gonna do that last month? Yeah, but this time I'll do it. I'm like, just go for it. Don't hesitate. And he wants to do the whole thing where he plans to prep for the thing that he's going to learn. I'm like, just learn it. Like, just go for it. Like, you guys all at some point have taken that leap, essentially, right? Doing this program. So it's like, hopefully you guys have felt that's beneficial too. So yeah.
We'll find out in a couple of weeks or months.
Yeah. Maybe a year from now you're like, dang, like that Victor, like, jeez. No, but I believe you guys are gonna be in a spot that you guys are gonna be like comfortable and like you're gonna find what you want and need. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like we should have like I know we're at time and stuff like this, but I feel like after this point it's like, oh, it should be like philosophy time, after the whole technical thing.
No, what we really should do is have a little virtual bar and everybody have a drink and
there you go.
Usually
the cohorts will have like a little bit of like on the end date on like that November 6th would have like a little like get together, but I'm not going to be here really. So if you guys want that, like if you guys want to get together as a little cohort, like have a little like like I don't know, little Zoom meeting or whatever, let me know and I'll try to set something up even if I can't be there. But
Yeah, let's do that.
Yep.
yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
I'll put it on the calendar and we'll figure that out then. That way you guys can, and I'll have the Zoom meeting. That way you guys can just hop in even if I can't be there. So.
Okay, cool.
Try not to get too sloppy.
There was a cohort, not my cohort, but there was a cohort that would have drinks with each other like in a little group every Friday, like online and stuff like that. From what I understand, maybe some of the one of the instructors like, yeah, people drink a lot at some point, which I think is really funny, because it's not really drinking alone, but I guess I don't know. All right, everyone. Well, I'm gonna stop it here. And yeah, today's Thursday, so I know I have some one-on-ones with some of you all, but if not, have a good weekend, and we'll see you by Tuesday. And again, if you come up your assessment, feel free to message me and we can set that up for next week or even the week after.
Or the week after.
I'm gonna message you then. I'm gonna message you to set that up.
Perfect. All right. Take care, everyone.
All right.
Bye,
Have a
everyone.
good one. Bye.
Bye.